I would very much love to say that in the thumbnail and the title, I was being a little dramatic about the "we almost died" thing, but I wasn't. We could have very well died, or at the very least, gotten severely injured. I'm going to tell you about that, what I did to prevent it. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm Felix. Welcome to the Roaming Gomes. Here, we talk about everything RV life, from tips and tricks, repairs, and occasionally taking you along on some of the great places we've been able to see in our 3.5 years on the road. If that's something you might be interested in, please consider subscribing. If you hit the like button, it does a lot for the channel. And don't forget to stick around till the end of the video for our exclusive feature entitled, "Why Do We Say That?" About 2 weeks ago, I was stepping outside to have a cigarette. Sadly, I am a smoker. And I noticed a very, very strong odor. My first thought was, my black tank sprung a leak. So I started walking around the rig to go take a look. It was nighttime, and it's very quiet in this park at night. Well, I got about halfway around the rig in front of it, and I heard a very, very loud hissing. Well, just around that time, my brain kicked in, and I realized this smell was kind of familiar. It was propane. And there I was, standing less than 5 feet away from the source of that propane with a lit cigarette. Needless to say, I crushed the cigarette out immediately, pulled the cowl off of the tanks, and realized that there was a very, very big leak coming from a seam in the propane regulator.
It's gonna blow! Get down!
Now, a little backstory. When we were first taking delivery of this RV, the head technician who was in charge of the prep noticed that this RV had no propane regulator on it. The tanks were not hooked up. So he went to get a propane regulator. Now, this was in the midst of the big recall from Keystone of propane regulators. So I did my due diligence and made sure that he was replacing it with a good propane regulator. He assured me he was, and he showed me the part in the packaging. I watched him take it out of the new packaging and install it. Fast forward to 1.5 years later, 2 weeks ago. And this regulator failed miserably. It failed so badly that I had 2 full 30-pound propane tanks, and one of them had already emptied when I discovered the leak. So I had to replace the propane regulator. Doing so is really not a big task. It's just that there are some very important details that need to be paid attention to. One, tape all of your joints using specifically plumber's tape that's made for gas. 2, the replacement regulator should be a high pressure regulator and automatic changeover, which is what the previous regulator was. And it was high automatic changeover. I don't know if it was high pressure. The regulator that was placed on the unit was one of the regulators that was subject to the recall. However, these regulators are still on the market, and from what I can tell, they have been repaired, modified so that they no longer are a threat. So I have no idea if it was simply a defective regulator straight out of the package, but after a year and a half, there really should not have been a failure. The other thing that you need to pay attention to when replacing your regulator is once you have all of the fittings in place, spray it with soapy water to ensure that there are no leaks. In my case, there was a leak on one side. So I removed that joint. Obviously, I turned the propane tanks off. I removed that joint and redid it. Retaped it, retightened it, checked it again, and it was fine. Please pay attention to your propane regulator. Pay attention to your propane system. Be sure that you have a good propane detector in your RV. My experience with propane detectors is generally, and I can only go by my experience, on our previous RV, that propane detector went bad after about a year, where it was showing false positives and alarming for no reason. So we replaced it. The same exact thing happened in this RV. So maybe, and again, this is only by my experience, maybe when you take delivery of your RV, one of the first things you should do is replace your propane detector. In the instance that I was in, the propane detector would not have served any purpose. The smell wasn't inside the RV. It was when I stepped outside. And now our exclusive feature. This week's phrase is "cat got your tongue." The origin of "cat got your tongue" is kind of interesting. A lot of people think that they're talking about the actual feline cat. They're not. They're talking about the cat o' nine tails, which was used on sailing ships for punishment of sailors that had not properly performed their job or had broken some sort of onboard rule. On English sailing ships, any sailor entrusted with a secret by a higher ranking officer could not reveal that to any of the other sailors under the threat of being whipped with the cat o' nine tails. So, when a sailor wouldn't speak about something, people would say, "Cat got your tongue?" with the idea in mind that they were not speaking because they were in fear of being whipped by the cat o' nine tails. That's all I got for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, hitting that like button is a big help for the channel. I will see you next time. I'm Felix. This is the Roaming Gomes. And I hope we can help to bring you less worry and more wonder.